An absolutely wild scene at Watkins Glen today. Plenty of passing and aggressive racing. One overtime session, which we won't let Ben Schneider get into it tonight, but I'm sure he'll have opinions on that. But regardless of that, it was a finish we're going to be talking about for a while. SVG with a driver error, as he put it himself, hit the wall entering the bus stop, and that allowed Chris Buescher to prosper, get on the back bumper, push him up, and get around. It's his first He's the first non-playoff driver to win in this year's playoffs. It's his first of the year and his first on the road courses. Joe, how big is this win for Buescher and RFK on a day when co-owner Keselowski found himself in his own trouble?
This is huge for Chris Buescher. This is a big statement, and we're coming to Bristol, a racetrack where he knows how to win. I would not count out Chris Buescher as a potential 2-in-a-row winner next weekend at Bristol. He could easily go in there, have a strong race. The beautiful part of this playoff system, with him out of it, he got this win. He could just go out there, focus on wins. He's not worried about point racing. He's not worried about anything. And I think really, especially after what we saw with Ross Chastain last year at Phoenix, where he went out there, went on Phoenix, said, I want to get this race win. I felt Watkins Glen, we saw a lot of drivers that just said, I know there's a playoff going on, but I want to get this win. And we saw Carson Hocevar up towards the front, Michael McDowell, Shane Van Gisbergen, all these drivers that are not in the playoffs. They weren't just, oh, here comes a playoff driver. Let's race them a little cleaner. I don't want it. Nope, they were just all day long, all race long, beating and banging, throwing the car sideways. This was just a fun race. I know it's just one of those deals for Chris Buescher. He's really shown he's a good road course racer because he just beat one of the best, Shane Van Gisbergen, in this. What a finish. I mean, he has to be so thrilled with what he just did. Yeah, he said it still stings that he missed the playoffs, but this helps because anytime you win, not only is that going to help you this year, it's going to help when it comes to contract talks, sponsorships. This is a huge moment for RFK.
No, 100%. And I think the big bread and butter of this was not a manufactured win. There was no bumper involved. We didn't see anyone in the wall. It was very much a drive to victory for Chris Buescher, which I think is going to look great for the resume. And I think you made a fantastic point about how Buescher can just kind of send it. He's not in the championship picture. He can just go for wins with no consequence. The issue with that is we've got a lot of drivers in the championship right now that are kind of driving like Chris Buescher, shall we say. Keselowski and a lot of different drivers still in the 16 for the championship got in trouble during the race due to aggression. A lot of 3, even 4 wide into the S's. Tons of beating and banging. MTJ was having none of it, man. He said, I don't know if these guys can call themselves the best in the world when they just drive through everybody. Joe, it looked like we had some people going bowling at the Glen. Did this cross a line for NASCAR? Do we think this is a bad look, or do we think this is a part of road course racing, especially in the playoffs?
We put, for the first time, a natural road course, Watkins Glen, in the playoffs. And I feel when you compare Watkins Glen to Sonoma or Circuits of America, much different character. Whereas Sonoma really passes a lot more tricky. You have to really just focus on the fuel strategy, the race strategy backwards. Circuits of America, it has gotten a little bit on the crazy side. We know the big rush up to turn 1 where you see a lot of chaos. This track, it has not changed the layout really since they started coming here, except what they did with the curbs this year and the rumble strips outside of the racing limits. But we still saw all the drivers racing just as hard, going wide. We saw the beating and banging, which traditionally we do here. We've seen some good finishes here where there's people beating and banging. This can be a physical and fast road course compared to Sonoma, where you have much more slower pace, got to finesse the car. How many times we saw a car just thrown sideways? I mean, Shane Van Gisbergen throwing that car sideways, entering the final corner, just doing everything he can to get around Chris Buescher. I really thought he was going to get there. It's just one of those deals that I really feel this was overall a good NASCAR race because NASCAR, they promote themselves as their series where there's beating and banging fenders, drivers getting upset at each other, hard racing. Did it cross a line? I would say if it did cross the line or feel like it was starting to get towards that line, that was when we had the restarts and the crashes that occur, especially the Keselowski William Byron crash. I still can't believe 4 wide entering the S's. All the years of watching NASCAR walk is going from the Winston Cup era up to now. It's picking up intensity every year. The playoffs, you add that in there, it just seemed like that got everybody up a little bit more. And the fact that nobody gave any room for the playoff drivers, I just think this is just one of those classic races where people are going to be talked about for quite some time. Well, does it belong in the playoffs going forward? I know it's not going to be next year, so maybe it'll dial it down. But the fans of Watkins Glen, they're going to probably be saying, "Hey, we want the playoffs back here again."
I think what makes it a race where you've got guys now going 4 wide in the S's is there's that feeling of competitiveness now, especially on the ovals. I think people wouldn't be putting it 4 wide if they didn't think they had a winning car, right? Or you could argue the contrary of people throwing Hail Marys to try and get position to work. But I just think that shows how competitive the field is. And one of the big victims of just how competitive the field was today, Shane Van Gisbergen almost had the win, was obviously very upset today, and defending against Buescher. Does this kind of show, Joe, how tense the Cup Series is in an event like this?
Yeah. Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, for our regulars, they know we've been following him with the grid ranking. He's won the grid ranking world championship. He's scored points in World Rally Championship. He seems to do everything, has success, and of course, that win at the Chicago Street Course. This year, okay, he got wins on the road courses in the Xfinity Series. He's trying to get an oval win. He has done several Cup Series races, at times led, but he just still does not have exactly the results. Granted, he's coming here as a learning experience, so we're not expecting him to go out to get a win. What happened in Chicago, the bad luck there, just being in the wrong place when Chase Briscoe locked up and pushed him in the wall, just the way it goes in racing. He ran a smart race. Him and his teammate Ross Chastain, colleague, Trackhouse Alliance, they had everything pretty much going their way. He made a great move on that restart, and it's just a mistake as a driver error that cost him the win. This is showing this is not just a cakewalk for him, these road courses. People say that about the Chicago Street Course, and I'll give him the benefit. Nobody had done a Chicago Street Course or any street course in the Cup Series besides Shane Van Gisbergen and Supercar Series. Now he came here to Watkins Glen, a track that has been part of the Cup Series schedule since, I believe, the 80s, throughout the 90s, always been part of the season. Drivers have the notes. Drivers have the experience. The teams have the notes. He really showed he could go out there and get a win. And I felt if he was to get this win, this would have been, for him, a bigger accomplishment than Chicago. Because in Chicago, that was new territory for everyone. To come here to say, hey, I just beat you at a track where Kyle Larson has won, William Byron has won, Truex, Hamlin, Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, the names go on. That would have been huge for him to show, I'm here, I'm the real deal. I just got to work on the ovals. To see how upset he was, you know he wanted it badly. And I think he is just showing that while some people will say, well, Cup Series drivers, like Truex said, they're not looking like the best drivers in the world when they keep crashing. But let's be honest, how many times we could have seen more crashes 3 or 4 wide and they didn't? They're pushing each other to the limits. They're pushing their competition to the limits. Getting that win is so rewarding, and Shane Van Gisbergen was just so gutted. A mistake he made by Chris Buescher. I mean, let's think about that. 2021, 22, I don't think we would ever say Chris Buescher would make Shane Van Gisbergen make a mistake and lose the race. What an amazing effort by SVG, and this race, he really put it all out there. This is part of racing. You make that mistake on the last lap and it costs you, he's going to learn from it.
I think it just goes to show how much this series and this sport has evolved over the past couple of years. And you, Kobe, and I have talked about how I don't want to say catered that initial win was for Shane Van Gisbergen, but the odds and the environment were so in his favor last year at Chicago. And he's proven himself in numerous environments outside of that. Top 10s at ovals, back-to-back road course wins. You watched one of them, Joe, at Portland and Sonoma. It's clear this guy is good, but he's unfortunately today our biggest loser.